Hi, Matt.
Hi.
All good?
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah. Good. Feel lots to do, lots to do. Just came off the graphical board meeting, but
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So Pascal has lots of new stuff, and I
Yeah, I
think
saw he added some topics to the agenda.
if we get that in a rough state, not a final state, but then we can advance a lot of the spec once we made at least an agreement of going with one of the approaches and starting writing some text
Yeah.
for it. Um,
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Camel is also coming. He also prodded
He
a
has to
bit
catch
at
up.
these
He has to
things.
catch up at least 2 weeks now.
Yeah. I say, quickly get a coffee.
Hello, everyone.
Hey,
Hi.
all the balloons are gone now.
Yeah, just one cloud, obviously.
Oh, yeah, the cloud's still there.
Yeah.
This AWS, right?
Yes. Strong uptime, as you
One of
can
the
tell.
one of the tiniest regions.
Yeah, the tiniest of them all.
Michael is getting some coffee. I think we're good to start after that.
Since both Michael and Pascal, you're in the Swiss, right? So congratulations are in order for Eurovision contest winning that, right, this year?
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, I guess so. Who had thought? Who had thought? I think the last time we won, that was like with Celine Dion. I think that what was that? 50
Wait,
years ago?
but isn't she Canadian?
That's what I thought, right?
Well, I think
Yeah,
she's
what most people don't know is that the singer doesn't have to come from the country. Just the song has
Aha.
to be written in the country.
I didn't know that either. That
Yeah,
seems like a weird
true.
rule, but
Celine Dion
yeah.
represented Switzerland in Eurovision back in 1988, even though she's French Canadian.
Got it. So you
Yeah.
recruit an all-star cast to come in and be on your roster.
I mean, fair to
Yeah.
say, it's this time it was actually.
I mean
I mean,
that
It
it's
was
the
very,
singers.
very political to say.
It's always
yeah.
political. It always has been, and it will always be. So, it's,
Anywho,
Okay. Are we ready? And let's start. Let me remind you that we all agreed here by attending to the GraphQL Spec Membership Agreement and to the GraphQL Foundation Code of Conduct. If you don't know what the Code of Conduct is, it's in the linked in the agenda, so you can check it out. And with that, we can start. And we have one topic at least, and that's the expression syntax. And I hand over to Pascal, who is working on that.
yeah, so I have prepared not very much, but we can have a look at it together. There's actually two problems that we have to have a look at. So let me make this a bit bigger. See. And then I guess you also want to see my screen, otherwise it's a bit boring. Let's do it. Okay,
Where's my-
desktop 2. Yes, it's the one with the 2 on it. So do you see something?
Yeah.
Awesome. Very good. So this is actually an example that Camille showed me today. But we'll not talk about this now because this is way too complicated to start the day with. So put that down here. So we talk about the expression syntax. So let's talk about something simple where we have a query where we do something like product by ID. And now we have an ID here, and we have this that's what ID. That's perfect. That's exactly what we want to see. ChatGPT already knows the syntax, so that means that's very good. This is the easiest way to select a scalar with the specification that is currently in progress.
But the
Now-
is optional, right? Because
I'm not sure if we said that it could be. I think it's more of a validation thing. It doesn't matter for the scalar, I guess.
So
You know, it's more about this part, the
yeah, so
specification.
I would defer that as what is the directive is like conversation later. I think the syntax is like we need to be able to match the inputs to outputs, right? That's what we're trying to solve the selection syntax. As we were discussing recently, maybe that add is actually should be part of the lookup itself. But let's talk about this selection syntax first.
Yeah, so that's the easiest thing. I mean, we can also leave it away if it matches. That's something that we have to decide down the road.
Yes.
Obviously, that's also something which is very easily to do later on because if we do it like this, then we have over-declared it, which is always easier to then later remove it rather than having to later go back in the past and change it. Anyway,
yeah.
so
maybe
good.
it would be easier if we used a different field
let's
name, like a field name that's different
let's
from the.
Yeah. Now things start to get interesting when we have an input here. So let's call this the product find input, whatever. And this product find input is actually a input which has the field ID. Now, what happens in this case? In this case, we have to somehow map these this ID field from the product, so the output type to the input type.
Yeah.
In the specification at the moment, how it's written, something that you can also check and argue about is I have decided to over-declare it at the moment because it's easier for us to infer that this is actually the product input type because now it looks like an input type. It has the same shape.
Yeah.
So that's also over-declaration because in theory, you would also not have to declare it and we would know what to do, theoretically. The interesting thing starts when we have to drill into stuff. So let's say we have a category, which is a category find input, and then we have an input where the ID is there, product by category ID, and we have the product find input, and now we have to match this category. This means that we have to drill into it, and this is all good because this stays the same, but the question is, what do we put here? We somehow have to say that we want to have the category ID field. Initially, we discussed it to be like this, but actually, there's already a proposal about the field expression syntax, which Benji did, and he proposed the drilling into the next level to be this symbol instead of the dot.
I like the dot. But
one second. So this would just mean that it's the category field, and inside the category we go into the ID. The reason why this we're actually considering it to be a better syntax is because there's already some thought that went into the whole thing by someone else, which is always good. And the second thing is that when we do have abstract type, things start to get really interesting for both approaches. So let's say we have a product.
But could you say a little bit about the reasoning behind using a different symbol there?
I will in this example, because you will see why there is a different symbol as soon as we go into abstract types. So let's just call this abstract to make it simple. It doesn't need to make sense. We have an abstract, and here we have an ID on it. There we go. And we also have a type product, which implements the abstract. And we have a type movie. I don't care which implements the abstract. Actually, we could also say that this is product. And we have a book and the movie, and then everyone knows what we're talking about. Right. Let's do like this. Okay. So now we have the product by ID, which is still pretty easily, because which we can do still pretty easily, because we have an interface, and this interface defines a value where we can say that here we want to have the ID, and this would still refer to this interface field, which is also fine. It just works. When we do it nested like this, let's see that this is the, I don't know, product ID. When we do it nested, it's still easy because we can still just reference to the ID. The problem starts when this isn't an interface, or when we have to drill into sub-properties of the interface. So as soon as we don't have one field that describes both abstract type, then we have an issue. So if this is a union, and this union is a book or a movie, then we don't have this ID field. We theoretically have it, but practically we don't. We have to specify if it's the ID field here, or if it's the movie ID.
Yeah.
And this is where the problem starts. In the current implementation, we have the syntax for it is to have some kind of the generic syntax where we say, if it is a product, then take the ID. If it is a book, then take the ID. But if it is a movie, then take the movie ID.
Yeah.
Now, the solution that the expression syntax has in this topic, and this is actually it's kind of nice. It does this. It just uses schema coordinates. I'm not sure about this pipe, but we'll see.
But
it uses schema coordinates as soon as you want to define a type.
But if you go deeper, if it were deeper,
then you use the different symbol. That's the reason why there is a different symbol.
It's pretty confusing to me to use schema coordinates here to mix type names and field names in that way.
Yeah. So the reason why is with this, you have the same syntax as the schema coordinate, which is in the spec. And when you want to drill in, then you just do this, and then you would have for example, you would have.
Yeah.
But why do you have a schema? I don't get why you would have the schema coordinate. But what is if next level you have the same decision to do? Also,
then you do it again.
It looks very bloated to me.
I mean, you don't have to do it if you don't have to do it. You know, it's just you can do it. You can always do it, but you don't have to do it. But sometimes you have to do it. That's when the type is not clear. It's the same thing here. You could theoretically do this on every level, but you shouldn't, because it's not necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah, but still, this syntax is much cleaner that we have at the moment with the dot. This also has precedence in spec, right? Pascal, because it's very similar to the flat field syntax.
That's more this one. It's the flat field syntax is more this part of it.
No,
the flat
the
field
dot-
syntax
the-
is
the dots, the dotted, because in the flat field syntax,
true.
with the
You
dots,
pull
you
it up.
can pull up.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So there is precedence also for this in the spec. Both
Yeah, but-
proposals, by the way, have no champion, right? So we don't. I mean, these are. So what Pascal looked at, because Benji pointed to these, is essentially proposals that some people wrote, but they don't have a champion, so we don't have to take them. But it's good to have looked at them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why that's exactly the reason why I presented here. It's around this. It's just to start a discussion about this. If you prefer this over this, I don't mind. I don't really have a strong opinion on it because this is complicated. This is kind of complicated too. I do have a new experiment which I also already pitched, but it's a bit of a controversial one, because as we agreed on that, or in the spec, how it's written now, the specification is that this is the input, this is an output field, and this is an input again, right? So the question is, why even care about the string, and why just do it this way?
So you mean
yeah,
make it a custom scalar, you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, the problem is that's where the discussion starts, right? It's not a scalar, it's a composite type. But instead of a scalar, we could just use a JSON, which doesn't exist, a JSON scalar, which basically reflects this, it's exactly the same shape as this. And we would have exactly the same syntax that Graph already supports, except for the prop drilling, of course, because that's what we have to decide on anyway. But I just played around with it. It's really nice because as soon as this gets very complicated, then you get support from the IDEs to actually format the stuff, right?
But you can also get that for the in strings.
Yeah, you can,
It's just-
but it doesn't work out of the box. It's quite nice that it works out of the box.
Yeah, but you don't get that for the string part in here either. Like the actual path syntax where you want auto completion. Like if you type book dots, you still don't get any help.
Yeah. I mean, we cannot make it that easy, but we can help.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's things to explore. One thing which I would like to have a decision on quite quickly is in which direction we want to go, because if this is a scalar or not, that's something that you can also think about, and we can have a chat about it next week. Just think about if you prefer to have it as a string encoded thing, or if you prefer to have it as here, because then we can make a decision on it internally and then make the decision on that big work.
I would say let's make a decision next week on which we take to explore to write spec parts with it.
Yes, exactly.
We can always say we took the wrong thing and rewrite it later, but we will not find out the best syntax if we don't start applying it and writing experimentations with it.
Yeah, I mean, my point here is that I want to have a decision internally that I can prepare the spec for the final thing, and then we can have something which is actually complete, more or less, which is the combined view of how the subcommittee sees it, and then we can have discussion in the big work group about something that's actually has some meat on it, because at the moment it's just we could do this or we could do this, but I think I just need to write the spec and then we can decide on what to do with it. So let's make a decision on this next week internally, and then I will prepare it for the big one.
What is the feeling with the people
generally
here?
Yeah,
like what are the preferences?
let's first start with this. let's first start with this because there's actually one big thing which is open anyway. Let's first start with this. Do you like the dot syntax with the generic in the path like this? Or do you prefer the expression syntax? Just to get a feeling. Path?
I'm for the
sorry, I
dot.
missed the question.
This, or this?
Okay, so that's the question. It's not scalar versus string. It's
Not
these two.
yet. That's the next question.
Okay, yeah.
It's that's why I want to start here so that we can pick this up. So this is path.
The dotted syntax with the generic, or would we?
Just raise your
rather
hand
have
if you're
the
for
other
the
one.
path or the syntax.
But what are we voting for? Like, what's
Just
the-
We're
get a
not
feeling.
voting. It's just
We're
a
not
feeling.
feeling.
What is the general feeling? Like looking at the syntax styles, just that we can.
I mean, we
get
vote anyway. We do anyway all the votings in the final in the big work group. It's more
Yeah.
about what should I prepare for the big work group. We can have still next week to decide on this what I should do for the big work group, but just to give a bit more time and more feeling. Because if we agree that we want to explore this instead of this, then I can also just start with this. So that's the thing.
Yeah. The first one does seem a lot clearer to me, cleaner.
So
I
you
think-
would.
Yeah, I would say dot syntax for paths is sort of an established convention, and replacing that with a different symbol is pretty confusing to me.
What's your feeling, Derek?
If you're a Windows guy, we can also do it this way.
I don't know. It is a very fringe case because I'm not sure how often this is actually used in actual schemas, but it's
This will be used everywhere,
yeah.
and I'll get silly.
Yeah, so overall I like the dot syntax, but I'm not sure about the generics part of the
We can
types.
leave it here and go
Yeah.
a bit further because there's something that we probably have to. We maybe not probably. We maybe want to change anyway. Okay, so this one is also something that you can think about. Do you prefer it to have it as a string? Do you prefer it to have it as an
Wait,
input object?
Pascal. Wait. Let's first get the thoughts of everyone. I
Yeah,
want
but-
the general idea. Shane, what are your feelings? The dotted syntax, the expression syntax?
The generics syntax for me resonates the most with other, obviously, patterns out there. But once I finally have understood the arrows, and I had to go read Benji's document a second time, I think I'm trending towards the bracket one, because of its clear distinction. Well, the other thing is it's just JSON pathing, right? Like it's a JSON path spec too. So I'm leaning towards the brackets there, the one on the bottom.
This one.
This one.
Yeah.
Okay. Kamil?
Coming.
Yeah, for me the dotted syntax.
This one.
Yeah, it just feels
Okay.
feels more natural.
And this is not
You're
a
in
vote.
the-
It's just to get the feeling of where
you're
we
in
all
the-
stand.
You're in the dotted syntax, dotted path, also, Michael, right?
Yeah.
And,
I noted down.
I don't really have a strong opinion on it. I just want to have something that most of the people agree on it. For me, it's just syntax. So I can live with this. It kind of makes sense. The question with this is, what's still unsolved is what happens when you have to have two paths in parallel. But anyway, we got some idea about how people feel.
Yeah, I should probably read the spec doc.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that's
I mean, I will. It's good that we talk about it now, so that people know that we'll do something. It's also not the final vote next time, but at least what I should finalize the spec for, because then I will just finish the spec, and then we can have something people can read for the final for the big work group.
yeah.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I mean, if you change your mind, it doesn't matter. It's just like
It's just my time which is then gone.
yeah, yeah. But where should we invest a bit to flesh it out? And then we can still, because what we see, what we have to see still is we soon have to start writing spec with it and see if that scales.
Yeah, I
and then
mean,
it's still,
that's the reason. That's the reason that the capabilities of both of these formats are exactly the same. It's just syntax we're talking about.
Yeah.
So it does.
So I would say in general, like I like the dot syntaxes. That's kind of like you do JSON paths and all that stuff, right? So it's kind of like they're. I'm not a big fan of the generic part when you put the like book in those brackets. So, and in that sense, I kind of like the operation like whatever the expression syntax with the arrows. Then actually when you do the schema coordinates, but it's yeah.
Syntax is always difficult because there's a lot of taste in there also. I have another one because one more. So the syntax is one thing. One thing we also have to think about. Pascal, maybe can you add a new query with the finder one-off? And that's something Derek actually threw in to the discussion. And we also rethought this. Yeah, product.
Oh, you mean a new query type?
Yeah, a new query type, and then we say product. And then we have a product finder input. This is a one-off. And has ID and name. And I think this is a pattern. Once, like this is in the last spec stage, so it will go in the spec pretty much in the next couple of weeks or months. This will be finalized, and then we have the one-off pattern. And what I can see is that people kind of do this to not have these product by ID, product by this, and product by this, to have these finder props where you essentially have a structural union to describe what keys you want to take. And in this case, we could end up with two ises. That is the best solution that I have seen so far.
Or we could use the or that we also use for the, because it's somewhat similar, right?
No, it's different.
Well, but
it's two different key sets. It's not one key set, it's two.
So this is actually what was actually brought up as a feedback from one of the folks that I work with, and they mentioned that it looks like a lookup only concern, right? So when you do a lookup is to have like a query that you can jump to different places, right? And that is mapping is specifically for that use case, right? So all the other use cases seem like they have like a different, unless there's another use case.
No, there's require. Require has the exact same.
But is it at require you can also, well, technically you can have those as part of the lookup. So instead of having at is and you have a mapping,
No, but the difference is that both require and is apply to individual arguments, and lookup applies to the field as a whole.
Yep. You can also have this. You can also have this.
Yes, Pascal, but take it out for a second. Take it out.
Yeah.
So the thing here is, and that's key point. We talked a lot about last week, Pascal and me in private, but like this is now corresponding between the keys. Like the is corresponds to a key directive. And if you have the or in, it's not clear if that or means, okay, this is a different key component this refers to. You get what I mean, Martin?
Yeah.
You know, it could also be the ambiguity to this key set where you have the ID and the name when you have the or. But there is one thing which I just found out on the spot with this example. This is also going to be different. When you have two, what are you going to do?
In this case,
you
it's
wouldn't
not
have two.
valid.
Yeah, you don't have one is,
Two
right?
is two is only allowed if you have an input that is a one-off. Then you are
Right.
allowed to have two. Otherwise, you are not allowed to have two. So this is a thing that we.
So this is actually it's always a superset. Okay, this makes sense. So that means if I have an argument here, let's call it the foo argument, which is a string, and this would also be something. Let me wait one second. One second. I would just do this. Then this means that this would be the name and the ID. So this would be ID foo and name foo.
Yes. Yes.
And if I have two unions, the complexity would explode, right?
I think there's one issue here that I still don't fully get, because the two is approach only works when the one of input is sort of at the top level, like when that's the argument. But when there's a one of like further down in the path, I think the situation gets more similar to the type condition case. Like you actually, like in the type condition as well, you have multiple paths, and they could be at any level. I think the same is true of one-off.
Yeah, but here it's a bit different because like this pattern that you have here with the one-off at the top level is where you decide between two keys, and that could be a pattern. It's not yet an established pattern, but like even the spec as example mentions this kind of finder logic where you have the structural unit at the top giving you the keys that you opt into.
Well, but what if the product finder input is a normal input type but has a field that refers to a one-off input?
Then you would still. I think the difference between the two things, it's really you have to think about the key on the entity, because if you have nested, you would define them nested as well. So let's think this would be nested. You would say foo, which is the one-off. So this would be the one-off, right? And then you would still define two, because the reason why you still define two is because it's completely two different things.
And that's the point, that if you move it to the lookup itself instead of the arguments, that actually makes it clearer to connect between those two. Because the at require an arguments can have an argument there that actually does the mapping as well, right? So instead of having multiple directives to define what you're trying to do, so at lookup with at is on each one of the arguments, you just have a single directive at lookup with the same thing. So you still have the mapping of the inputs to output types, is just moving it from one place to another. That's basically, that's like I get what you're saying.
It's an interesting thought. Yeah.
Do you think we should have like a, because right now it's like pure abstraction, right? But if we could have like, I don't know, 5 different examples with 2 methods that we could actually see how it, like, for example, what Martin mentioned, which is like a fragment spread with some, deeply within the key field, then it would be one example, right? Then we can have something that we can talk about really, like based on an example. So then we can see actually how it feels to write such things in, deeply nested structures for the key field. Is it like a lot of, duplication and so on? I
Yeah,
feel
but
like this
because
would help
like
the discussion a bit.
Can
yeah, I think that's
do we have volunteers which would come up with examples that we could do in the next session?
Yes,
Because
I
then
can
we
do
can
it.
first have a discussion about how we want to have the syntax, and then we can actually write it in the syntax, and then we already have the first trial of the syntax and see how it feels.
I mean, I can like write a few examples I've seen that people are using with Federation. So then we can have.
But not only the ones, please, not only the ones that you sent me today, because that's.
Oh, I have a lot of those. So yeah,
No, please don't. Please don't send me those ever again.
I mean, yeah, I mean, this one is like strange, but when people use keys to pass basically fields, but
Yeah.
they do it.
We will,
But
we will get there. So just to finish up the thought here about why this is interesting, or this has to be two different is directives, even if they're in the lookup, I don't care. It has to be two distinct things, because if you think from a query planner perspective, if you would have it as the when you declare both here like this, you would say this is name. Then the query planner would have to get the ID and the name, which
Oh no,
in
no,
the
but
worst case.
I was thinking we'd use the or syntax that we also use for.
You mean actually the whole selection set? That's
Yeah.
also possible. That would be
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah, and then in
That
the
would be
one-off,
possible.
and then in the one-off case, like the or would be nested.
Yes, I see. I see.
I
Yes,
think
I
that
understood.
was
I
what's
understood.
confusing.
I understood this completely wrong.
Yeah.
Could be very confusing to folks.
Yeah, I mean, honestly,
These are edge case. These are weird cases.
we just try to find. We just throw it at the wall and see if it breaks.
Yeah.
Right. I see. That would work too. It's just important that we have two different things.
And I kind of this actually is a clean syntax. I would probably not write the one off there, Pascal. Just have two objects in there.
No, one of is the property name.
Yeah, that's a bit confusing, but I get what you were trying to do, but yeah.
Okay.
I just want to signal that this is a one off.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is cleaner than having two.
All right, so let's write this down quickly. So we have the expression syntax, expression syntax versus the path syntax. Then we have the one-off problem that we have to solve, which we could do with the pipe, or we could do with the two is close. Anyway.
Yeah, because with the pipe,
the third thing.
Yeah.
The third thing that we have to just get an opinion on until next week is if we should try this, which wouldn't work anymore if we go with the pipe.
I wouldn't, Pascal. I wouldn't go with that. I would do it as a string, personally.
Yep. So man. Now let's talk. Are you ready for the difficult part? Because that was the easy stuff. Carl will show me an example today. Actually, I think I'm just gonna check this out. You sent me even a very good example of the key. The problem that we have here is that we define a finder for this entity. So now when we define a finder for this entity, we would have a lookup. This. The syntax is wrong, but we would have a lookup like this. Right? Now, the issue is this.
Wait, what's the product list input type? How is that defined?
Let's just call it. It would
Can you post it,
be-
Pascal?
Yeah, I'm posting it. It would be this. And this is the difficult part. Because technically, you can do this in Federation at the moment.
But what's the problem? Can you
How do
explain
you-
the problem?
The problem is, how do you map with the path syntax an array?
What's the
Yeah,
key?
so-
Into
The key. This is the key.
This okay.
So the
He's-
key,
He's quite
the
large.
key
It has a
here-
list.
the key here is like a list of products with ID, PID, and category and so on. But I feel like the like an annotation for an array, a list, is not really needed, I think, because it eventually has to match the type itself, right? So if within the type,
Yeah.
the output type, you have a list, then it's supposed to be a list. I mean, we don't want to like select a first element or, you know, some element at index, whatever. So then we don't really need to like, I feel like that we don't really need to like select something. So then it doesn't have to be a list within the syntax. But yeah.
The problem is when you have something like this. You have a type geo thing, which has coordinates, and these coordinates are coordinates, and these are value types. So that's a struct. Which just exists. And then this is the output type, but then you would have an input type where you say the find the locate input, and this doesn't have coordinates. This has position, and maybe this isn't the coordinate input, but this is the position. And if this doesn't match, then there's no way how to express this in the path
Why not?
syntax.
Well, why not? We can. I think you can use the normal alias syntax here.
Yeah.
Right.
I
So
would
let's
also
try
construct an
to
object.
let's try it, and then maybe it's easy. Maybe I'm doing it too complicated in my mind. I'm happy to be corrected. So we need an input, and then
So
we say we want to have the positions.
Yep.
And then what do we do?
Positions. Where do you have positions? And now you mapped
In the
object.
output, sorry, in the output type, this would be the geo thing.
Yeah. So the X is coordinates.lat.
Yeah, so that would be coordinates dot lat,
Mhm.
and
And
the
y.
y would be coordinates dot
That one.
long. Yeah, so that works theoretically in this example.
Yeah, I see where you're going. The thing you're missing is converting just a list of floats. So don't make coordinate. Go back up to line 166. You can delete type coordinate and just make coordinates a list of floats.
Here,
and just delete type coordinate. Now what do we do?
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
but
but now
this is-
that's a completely different thing. Like, I mean, you could theoretically encode it like this. Fair enough.
But I also think like we map here an object, and actually, if you're in positions, can you revert that like that we have the old thing there? I don't
What's the
think
old
it's a
thing?
problem. Yeah,
I mean, this
you have the
doesn't work.
No, because like at the moment,
You
like
can
when you
have
go to
nested-
position,
You can have nested arrays. As soon
why
as you have
doesn't
nested arrays,
yeah, but then you go the nesting has to match.
right? If this is right, fair enough.
The general structure has to. We don't have a full remapping syntax here, because then you
Yeah.
have a whole lot of other problems. If you want to like pull lists up and stuff like that, that's a problem.
I see. This is gonna be this. I mean, I said, as long as you don't do stupid things like this, and then you start mixing the things, whatever. Let's also call this true. When you do something like this, then it will not work.
But I mean that also doesn't work even in Apollo Federation. That you
well, it kind of
the structure.
It kind of you don't have to, because you just don't care, because there is no verification what you do.
Yeah, but there is no remapping. Like the object value in the representation is 1-to-1.
I mean, yeah. One thing which we have to also see is, I don't think that it's valuable to talk about this case, because this case actually describes a problem that we have to solve in a different way. Because what they actually want to do, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe you know, Camille, but what I guess what they wanted to do is they want to have this in the subgraphs as information. And that's the reason why they define it as a key, which is the wrong tool to use to define this. There's just no other way to do it at the moment in Federation. That's a problem that we should talk about in the composite schema spec and eventually solve. That there's subgraphs that require data which is not part of the key. In this case, they want to say, hey, gateway, please provide me also with a list of products and some selected things. But it shouldn't be in the key, because it's not the key of the product list. The product list shouldn't have a key because it's not an entity. It's a product list.
Yeah, that's also what
we see that abuse as well. And it's definitely something that people have sort of used as a workaround, but you're entirely right. That's not the right tool for the job.
Yeah, it's also I discussed that also with Carmen a bit. Like I also see that is actually a misuse of the system. Like actually an anti-pattern to reuse keys to pass in large blobs of data to subgraphs.
Yeah.
And there should be something else for it.
That's one thing. I'm not saying that we should support this, but what we should keep in mind is that you have structs that you may want to pass in, and we should just have to decide on what we do if this is the case. Because for me, even if we say that these actually have to match if it's a data type, I don't care. Even if we say that you basically, if you want to do positions, then you have to do it like this, otherwise it doesn't work. Even if this is the decision, I'm fine with it. It's just that we have to have a solution when you have a list of structs of value types that you want to put in. Because that's something I see.
So I feel like if somebody has like an additional data that is not part of the original type, let's call it entity, then this could be, because it's like fairly complex to like annotate correctly and make it aware for, make the query planner aware of it and so on. So I feel like and also the composition. So I feel like we could like put it aside and like deal with it as, you know, part of like, I don't know, next iteration of the spec. Because the key fields, I feel like it's like good enough, and the people abuse it, yeah, but it's like it shows the problem that people really need those. But I don't know if we should like propose a solution for those cases yet.
Because I don't think we actually want to encourage people to convert that weird usage to a lookup field. Like that's sort of propagating the same mistake, but now in a different way.
And also it would make the lookups less useful for the client use case.
Yeah, and for caching, I mean, yeah.
So this might be there. So I think it might be bike sharing those. I think it's fine if we limit the lookup to actually not handle those anti-patterns, because to me that sounds like an anti-pattern, and we shouldn't be encouraging folks to do those things, because like having like lookup with the key that is composed of nested arrays of keys, that is, I don't know, it sounds like an anti-pattern to me.
Yeah, that was also my
it makes sense. It makes sense only if somebody is building like a distributed GraphQL based calculator when you pass like, you know, values and do multiply and stuff, but yeah.
Well, but I mean, there could be a better mechanism to propagate this information. It doesn't have to be a lookup, right? That's what we're talking about. Because people are using it to pass the different information, right?
Because if we define the lookup right, we can take the lookup actually also back to the core spec or an appendix to the core spec. And that would be good for Relay, for Apollo client, for all sorts of things to really specify the key problem that we have.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and I don't see, so my feeling is also, we don't have to have a mapping syntax that can map, that can completely restructure the data. If we can do simple mappings from different names, it's okay. But like completely reshaping, like aggregating lists up, I think is out of scope for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
We can do this. We can just leave it away. We can also there's ways to work around it, I guess. If we don't want to, which I completely agree on, if we don't want to support this misuse of a feature, although, you know, I understand why people do it, and that's the reason why we should have a solution for it. But it's just not a key. It's not what we should do.
No.
For this, I'm also fine having lists as inputs like this. I'm fine with that, because theoretically, especially in the coordinate use case, that could be a thing where you say, here's an array of coordinates, and then you have some kind of subgraph which resolves something of these coordinates. So having arrays somehow is fine as well.
Objects, Pascal, the object structure that you had, that was also fine for me. Like
we shouldn't do this. We should just leave it in this case, because that's wrong. That's mapping, because this is an array structure. This will fall apart as soon as you go into nested structures. So we should just make an exception for now, and then see if and how people want it, and then add it if they want it, or provide a better solution.
That makes sense to me.
Because the problem with this is this falls apart as soon as you start nesting stuff, because then it points into different, it starts to get weird. Maybe not. We'll see.
Could we write it down somewhere?
Yeah,
yes, that's why I write the spec.
Yeah, but what I mean is this limitation, just so we are aware.
I can write it down.
Yeah, I mean, we can put that in the RFC document as well.
like an example or something like that. Just yeah, because maybe at some point we will go back to that, and then we have the context and stuff.
Yeah, the good thing, if we keep it strict now, then once we explored the limitations of it, we can always add things. But if we go for very complex remapping logic, like this will haunt us. And also take forever to get consensus on.
Yeah, that's being said, like I would say the vast majority of use cases will be covered by simple, like single field or multiple field selections, right? So the ones that we're talking about, like the most complex ones, they're gonna be like that, whether they're like some abstract type selections, whether this is actually some list keys and all that stuff. I don't think those are widely used, for the most part. People are using it, but it's not the most commonly used cases.
All right, I think the one-off case with abstract types, I think that's a pattern that we'll see more of.
Yes. Yes, definitely. And like that I also can see, like it's two things. I expect that the finder pattern, and I don't mean our lookup yet. I mean that you have inputs with one-off. That is a case that I could imagine people gonna use in future when that is more widely implemented by servers. And the second thing is like that you have these decision based, basically what you do with a fragment and a key at the moment. It's also something that I can see.
Yeah, those complex keys will eventually pop out when we will talk about like required.
Yeah.
Because then you can pass anything, right? There should be no limits, I believe. So fragment spread, you know, aliasing maybe not, or maybe yeah.
I would say if you can make it work that it matches, then it's fine. Like if you have if we need this in require, if this, because I agree in require this maybe makes sense. I don't know, maybe.
It will.
But if you do this, if you do this in require and you want to actually require this and we need to do this, then we still need to match this data into an input type. So we still have the problem that we're not.
Yeah, but the problem is only when you cross the output type. So for like when you switch from a list to, you know, not a list, or like nullable to non-nullable and stuff like that, right? So I would say that requirement would be to that, you know, the input will always match the output, and then we good. Then we have like it will cover the requires, it will cover the lookup, and we see no problem there, I believe.
Right. So we actually
when you
want
do
to
this,
have
like,
something like this.
Conversion, then yeah.
Actually, I have no idea if it's X or Y or the other way around, but anyway. So you say that you actually want to have something like this.
But I mean, because if you have requires, then like it's put on top of the entity, right? So it has to match the shape of the entity.
So
it
what
could like
Sorry, go ahead, Camille.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was just saying that like if the shape should be the same, then the only thing that we can like reduce, let's say, or like I don't know, use maybe is like the syntax to like this flat path to a field. This kind of, but not conversion of types, like from a list to whatever, right?
That makes sense to me. Yeah, that's exactly what I was getting at. Putting the coordinates there, because that resolves the ambiguity, I think, right?
It does. And then you're again in this scope. So you're in with the input, you're in this scope, and with the output, you're in this scope.
Yeah, exactly.
That would make a lot of sense.
Plus, one question about the syntax. Do we always start from the root, or we start from the level of the thing we're in? So if
From
the
this.
transition...
The level
This
you're
is the
in.
root. This is the root. So
It
for the-
depends.
for
It
the-
depends.
For the input,
It depends, Pascal. Require is different. So in the lookup, we start from the return type, right? The return type is what we
I mean,
match.
yeah, but the same
But,
this question still applies to both.
But with a require, we are the type on which the field is, or?
yes.
Yeah, but what I mean is, like, if you are like 2 level deep and you want to like flat a field, right? Like select something that is like, I don't know, 2 levels deeper or something. You start from the point that you're at, or you have to specify the whole path from the root.
No, because you don't. You don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know in graphical. You can only look ahead. You can never turn back.
But I mean, like, you know, syntax wise.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, you can never turn back. You always have to look ahead.
Just
Martin,
to
you
clarify,
were
you can't
also
put the
saying something?
you can't put the is argument on anything underneath an input type. You can't put an is argument. It has to be at the root first argument. Is that your question, Camille?
No.
It was more about the selection set, kind of.
Yeah,
like the,
You mean that, like, the nested object that contains like X and Y, right?
Yeah, like there was like a
Yeah.
product, then category, and then whatever, right? So if you're in category, do you start from category, or you go from the, you know, the first element, the root of whatever path? But I guess starting from whatever level you are, then it makes more sense actually. I mean, I would expect that to be the case.
Yeah, getting from the root has a lot of problems, right?
Yeah.
You might need arguments to get to where you are. And also if you're in a list state, referencing the root could be a useful thing for some things, but it would entail a lot of complexities.
Yeah, it's complex enough, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
can
so-
always add.
So this would be in the requires. This is right require use case, right? I don't just have a brain fart now. You would do it on a type on the input of the field. So in this case, when you use require, the scope is the product. And
Yeah.
when you use a lookup with is, the scope is the return value.
I like that as an outcome that we construct here the object. It's kind of like a select or like a map. It looks like a map. You essentially have a list, and then you have the object syntax on there, and that functions like a map.
Why not? Why don't we just do it like this?
Nah, don't even.
No JavaScript for you? Okay.
But it's a good analogy. Like it.
Yeah, but
Works
this is the thing. If something is a list, you have to treat it as a list, because otherwise you have problems. Because all the programming languages treat maps like this. You do map, and then you do map again on something else.
Yeah.
And then you have the scopes. You have a scope which is this, and then you have a scope which is this.
So let's flesh this out, and but everybody is okay with that, or are there objections? Shane?
No, I think we can move forward and try to see where this goes. I think that's the biggest value we're going to get is getting more examples. Even if we don't choose this, the process of doing this will get us examples to then reapply to the next we need to do it again.
Yeah, I wanted to mention I was working for like past few weeks on like a lot of supergraphs and subgraphs that are like, you know, having data, real resolvers, real running servers, and so on. And I feel like it would be I talked with Michael about it, but I could convert those are federation subgraphs, but I could convert those into Fusion, or we can do it together And then those are like real servers with data that we can later on like, check if what we, specifying is like actually makes sense, if it has like, edge cases and stuff. And I feel like this could really help. And there's like, I don't know, 37 examples with a lot of variations, so I can prepare something.
To try out the syntax that we have.
Yeah, subgraph directives here, just to see if you can convert all those into, into the spec that we're creating and how it will look like, and if it feels like, more boilerplatey or it has some issues, we will see. Because then it's like practice that comes to like theory that comes to practice, right?
Yeah, I mean, we can always add these. Let's flush out the spec a bit, and then we take these examples that you have and see where we get into troubles with the composite spec.
So we still have next week before the next primary, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why we wanted to.
Actually, two, right? So I think that this month we actually have the 30th, right?
Check.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the,
Oh,
so the
that's-
sixth,
yeah,
the
but-
6th is the first primary.
That's perfect. Then we have a lot to think about. We can do some decision internally next week. I can prepare something. Can finalize it, discuss it once, and then move to the main for the final vote. Very good. Yeah, I think it's a lot to do. It would be really nice if we would get some examples. Maybe also put them in this folder that we have. So Kamal said that he has a few, maybe someone else. Then we can use them in the next meeting to quickly convert them. There's actually one thing. This would be the lookup. I think we have also to talk about this, right? Is this what you meant with the lookup thingy as a? Oh no, that's something completely different.
That's completely different. Yeah, the Shane was I think proposing like another structure for it for like
Okay.
selection to have the mapping.
Just
I just mentioned that instead of having at is, basically the path selection moves to at lookup. So you have at lookup key is whatever the selection set that we do over there. It maps to the keys. That's about it. So instead of having it per argument, you just have it on the lookup itself. Yeah. Well, it's probably should be just key versus keys, but yeah. It's a single
Yeah.
key, right? So then you single lookup matches to a key.
We can
I definitely
explore.
prefer.
We can explore all of these. I think this is independent of the syntax.
Yeah, that's what I'm
um,
saying. Like the most important part is actually having the selection syntax, the inputs to outputs, and how they actually match. Because other than that, then you can figure that out.
Do you, Shane? Do you also prefer this one now, or should we keep this in for reference?
So we didn't talk about that, but I don't think we should use this syntax. But what I think it highlights is it is like the expanded format of like if you blow everything up, what we're trying to do is say this argument maps to that key, and that's what we're always doing. We're always trying to map an argument to a specified key field, and it's very explicit. And that's what we're doing. I don't think we should do this because it gets very verbose, and if you have lots of keys, and I like the shorthand. We have GraphQL, we can use that. So, but like contextually, like this is a really explicit on what you're trying to do, and it does highlight that, and it is a way we could represent it. But I do like the much shorter. We can just do aliasing ID is equal to foo ID or whatever.
Yeah, let's go ahead with the syntax proposal we now have, also with the map, and then have a look at it next week.
Sounds good.
So one
Awesome.
one final reference. This dot, by the way. I just realized that's what Benji also wrote in the review for the flat chain syntax. That could be helpful if you have a selection set that you want to specify. So if we go crazy, we may not even need the generics. But no, you don't like that. No. Anyway.
Well, let's talk about it next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Yep.
Thanks.